Lesson 3.4 is about using place value to round decimal numbers. And students need to be able to round decimal numbers to any place value. So to the tens place, the ones place, the tenths, hundredths, thousandths, any place value. So before we start getting into rounding decimals, let's do a quick review of how to round whole numbers. Alright, so let's say you have the number 672, and you were told to round this to the tens place. If you're rounding 672 to the tens place, the first thing you want to do is identify the digit in the tens place. In this case, it's the 7. So rounding that number to the nearest 10 means you're thinking about which two tens is this number between. So 672 is between 670 and 680. Right, 672 is more than 670, but it's less than 680. And then rounding says you're trying to figure out, is 672 closer to 670 or closer to 680? And the way you do that is by looking at the digit to the right of the tens place. So if we're rounding to the tens place, we're going to look one digit to the right. If the digit to the right is 5 or greater, we're going to round up. If the digit to the right is less than 5, we're going to round down. In this case, 2 is less than 5, so we're going to round down. So 672 rounds down to 670. Let's look at another one or two whole number examples. All right, what if you have the number 728? And again, I'm going to say let's round to the tens place. Okay, so 728 is between 720 and 730. Right, 728 is greater than 720, less than 730. To decide which number it rounds to, we're going to look one place to the right. That 8 is 5 or greater. That tells us we need to round up. So 728 rounds up to 730. That means that 728 is closer to 730 than it is to 720. Let's look at one final example with whole numbers, and then we'll move on to decimals. All right. Let's look at the number 855. And this time I'm going to say let's round to the hundreds place. So we're rounding to the hundreds place. So 855, if we're talking about hundreds, is between 800 and 900. 855 is greater than 800, but it's smaller than 900. So we have to decide, is it closer to 800 or is it closer to 900? We're going to look one digit to the right. One digit to the right, we have a 5. That 5 tells us we need to round up. So 855 rounds up to 900. It's closer to 900 than it is to 800. So that's a quick review of rounding with whole numbers. Rounding with decimals, you follow the same steps. All right, first we're going to practice rounding to the nearest tenth. All right, let's look at the number 72 and 76 hundredths. So we're going to take the number 72 and 76 hundredths and round to the nearest tenth. So 72 and 76 hundredths is between 72 and 7 hundredths and 72 and 8 hundredths. It's greater than 72 and 7 hundredths, but it's less than 72 and 8 hundredths. So to decide if it's going to round up or down, you look one digit to the right. 6 is 5 or greater. That means we're going to be rounding up. So 72 and 76 hundredths rounds up to 72 and 8 tenths. It's closer to 72 and 8 tenths than it is to 72 and 7 tenths. Let's practice one more rounding to the nearest tenth. Five and 613 thousandths. And again, we're going to round to the nearest tenth. So here's the tenths place. So 5 and 613 thousandths is between 5 and 6 tenths and 5 and 7 tenths. 5 and 613 thousandths is greater than 5 and 6 tenths, but it's less than 5 and 7 tenths. So we're going to look one place to the right. One place to the right, we have a 1. That tells us we're going to round down. So 5 and 613 thousandths rounds down to 5 and 6 tenths. It's closer to 5 and 6 tenths than it is to 5 and 7 tenths. All right, so now let's look at rounding to the nearest hundredth. We're going to follow the same steps. 6 and 723 thousandths. We're going to round this number to the nearest hundredth. So the 2 is in the hundredths place. So 6 and 723 thousandths is between 6 and 72 hundredths and 6 and 73 hundredths. So 6 and 723 thousandths is greater than 6 and 72 hundredths, but it's less than 6 and 73 hundredths. We want to know which one it's closer to. We're going to look one digit to the right. We have a 3. That tells us we're going to round down. So 6 and 723 thousandths rounds down. It's closer to 6 and 72 hundredths. We'll do one more rounding to the nearest hundredth. Zero and 268 thousandths. And again, we're going to round to the nearest hundredth. So the 6 is in the hundredths place. So 0 and 268 thousandths is between 0 and 26 hundredths and 0 and 27 hundredths. So 268 thousandths is greater than 26 hundredths, but it's less than 27 hundredths. We're going to look one digit to the right. We have an 8. That 8 tells us we need to round up. So 268 thousandths rounds up to 27 hundredths. It's closer to 27 hundredths than it is to 26 hundredths. All right, and finally, let's talk about rounding to the nearest whole number. Whole number always means ones place. So let's say we have the number 13 and 2 tenths. If we're rounding to the nearest whole number, we're rounding to that ones place right here. So 13 and 2 tenths is between 13 and 14. It's greater than 13, but it's less than 14. We're trying to decide, is 13 and 2 tenths closer to 13 or closer to 14? So we're going to look one place to the right. That 2 tells us we're going to round down. So 13 and 2 tenths rounds down to 13. It's closer to 13 than it is to 14. And let's look at one more example rounding to the nearest whole number. $52 and 93 hundredths. We're going to round this to the nearest whole number. And again, whole number means ones place. So 52 and 93 hundredths is between 52 and 53. And we're trying to decide if 52 and 93 hundredths is closer to 52 or closer to 53. So we're going to look one place to the right. That 9 tells us that we're going to be rounding up. So 52 and 93 hundredths rounds up to 53. It's closer to 53 than it is to 52.